looked nice to see everybody, and then the rest of the people going, "Who's that guy?" I think Chris has gone off to make an announcement. Uh, are you at the convention, or are you just? Just a sadistic camera wielding fan. Is that what? Okay.
This is the last call. Last call. We're doing a interview with Christopher Priest as he'll go or proceed to the bleachers area towards the back of the room. I don't want to miss this. This is a rare opportunity. Last call for the interview with Christopher Priest.
This is the legendary Jose Delbo. Very talented artist.
What's happening? A panel here?
It's not a panel. It's just me standing here making a fool of myself. So, but feel free to hang out and make a fool of myself with me if you like. Doesn't matter.
All right.
There you go.
There we go. We want to welcome Christopher Priest to Dallas. Please give him a warm round of applause. I mean, this is a very rare opportunity to have an opportunity to dig into somebody's head a little bit about what they're writing about and what their past has been and what their future is going to be. So we're really looking forward to this conversation. I'm going to really open it up a lot to you to ask questions, but I want to just kind of get a feel from Christopher, kind of where are you today? Where have you come from? What are your thoughts?
All right. Hi. So, 40. A lot of you, well, some of you, can't imagine being 40, but my mentor was Larry Hama. Larry Hama was the guy that, the co-creator of the current version of G.I. Joe. So anything you see with G.I. Joe, that was Larry Hama who created that stuff. And I worked for Larry when I was 18 years old, when I started in the business. I started at Marvel Comics when I was 17. And Larry started working there shortly after. So I was 18 years old when I started working for Larry. And Larry said, whatever you're doing when you're 40, that's what you do for a living. So for the longest time, I just kept kidding myself about, well, being a comic book artist, comic book writer. I thought, well, I'll do this for a while until I get fired and I'll go on to college. And one year turned into the next year, and then it turned into the next year. And then 40 came and went. I'm 57. So I guess I'm a comic book writer. So the basically two things that you should know if you're wandering around going, who is that guy? The two things you should probably know is that I'm the first African-American writer to work in the comics industry, starting at Marvel in 1978, and the first African-American editor at DC Comics starting in 1990. The other thing you should probably know is that the Black Panther film was in part created or based upon my work. So that and Batman Begins, the first Christopher Nolan Batman film, the first act of that film was also based on my work, but DC being so stingy, they didn't put my name in the credits. But I've been writing comics for, as of June 8th, I've been writing comics for 40 years. That's 40. And it's kind of, wow, how much longer can I do this? I'm not really sure. But it's been an interesting career, starting in this late 70s when at Marvel when Stan Lee was actually working in the office, and I had the great privilege of actually being taught by Stan, being taught visual storytelling and editing skills and so forth from Stan Lee, from Jim Shooter. Denny O'Neil was my writing coach. As I said, Larry Hama was my editorial boss, my direct supervisor. Jim Shooter was the guy. He was the taskmaster, and he. Back in those days, we just we kind of like did it all. If you've ever seen the TV show Mad Men, the first season of the TV show Mad Men, when they started walking through the set, through the area where all those people worked at the ad agency, Marvel Comics looked exactly like that in the late 70s and the early 80s, and it was a very, very odd, strange place where nobody was making any money, any real money anyway. But everybody worked there. Marv Wolfman, Len Wein, Dave Cockrum. They all shared like a tiny office in the back somewhere. I had to make Xerox copies of Tomb of Dracula, which was drawn by Gene Colan, a wonderful man. But he used this very grainy sort of pencil that would come off in your hands, and I had to Xerox Tomb of Dracula a million times, and just do all the little scut work there. When I started at Marvel, John Romita Jr. was the key operator of the Xerox machine. He was 17 or 18 years old. And when I came through the door, he was so happy to see me. Although he had never met me before, he was just glad to hand off the key to the Xerox machine and say, look, you're up. You're the new guy. Most of the people at Marvel had never really worked with an African American before. So it was kind of an odd space to be in, and also to be that young. At 21, I was the youngest person to ever be promoted to editor, and I took over the Spider-Man line of comics at Marvel Comics. So anything that had to do with Spider-Man, that was back during the Secret Wars and the black symbiote costume and all that stuff. That was me back in those days. And it was just a really, really strange place. It was very sexist and racist, and there were all kind of jokes. There were racist jokes and sexist jokes. There were Jewish jokes. There were Italian jokes. It was very un-CP. I'm sorry, un-PC, unpolitically correct up there. The only jokes they didn't make were Polish jokes, because Jim Shooter was a 6'5", 6'6" Polish guy, and he ran the place, so there were no Polish jokes. But everybody else was kind of fair game in those days. In 1990, I'm just skipping along. In 1990, I came along to DC Comics. I had been writing for DC for quite a while, having done Green Lantern and relaunched Green Lantern with something called Emerald Dawn in the late 80s. Wrote a bunch of Batman stuff for them, including stuff that the first Nolan movie was based on. And then in 1990, I got talked into being an editor at DC Comics, and we did launch something called Impact Comics, which was for younger readers. We did a lot of stuff in the development group that was experimental comics that we launched during that time. And also during the time at DC, we put together a friend of mine, Dennis Cowan, approached me, and another friend, Dwayne McDuffie, approached me about something that eventually became a comic book line called Milestone Media. And we launched that right out of DC in the late the early 90s. We launched that out of there. And that's about it. I think, I kind of bounced around like most freelancers do between Marvel and DC. I've written just about everything at Marvel at one point or another, except the X-Men. But I am making regular trips to New York nowadays and camping outside Jordan White's store and going, please, please, please. So stay tuned. They announced me on some Spider-Man project at San Diego, so I guess I'm okay to talk about that. Something called Spider Force that has a bunch of spider people from the Spider-Verse doing spider things. And every day I'm on the phone with the editor going, who, what, what? So I'm getting caught up, with a lot of that stuff, and a couple of big projects from Marvel that I would love to tell you about, but I'll be shot dead if I do, because they're literally secret projects that are coming out within the next year or so. And that's it in a nutshell. That's who I am, and that's why I'm standing here getting stared at. It's been a career. It's been a really long journey. Currently, I'm writing Deathstroke for DC Comics. I just finished my run on Justice League, which DC did not like that much. Whoops. But I had a great time writing Justice League. And I'm doing a book for the Lion Forge comics. It's called Astonisher, which will be coming out in the fall, and I'm sure they announced it somewhere, or they're about to announce it somewhere. And I'm doing a project for Valiant Entertainment with the Hardcore, the group that came out of Bloodshot and Harbingers and all that stuff there. So I'm a pretty busy guy, and I'm late on everything, and everybody's mad at me, and that's basically it. So that's it. My main claim to fame is this movie that's put a lot of a big spotlight on for some reason. The movie made over $1 billion. I do not get a piece of that. So, I don't know. People keep thinking, hey, he's hit it rich now. I'm like, no. I'm still a working stiff like everybody else. But Don McGregor and myself and Dennis Cowan and Sal Valuto, my artist from Black Panther, we all went to the premiere, and it was just wonderful to be there and to see that work come to life on the screen. And it was a really moving moment for me, and it was just terrific. If you get the Black Panther Blu-ray, or if you legally download it from iTunes or any place legally, in the supplements, there's a roundtable discussion with the director, Ryan Coogler, and the executive producers and so forth. So Don McGregor, myself, Ta-Nehisi Coates, we're there on that supplement. So if you get bored and wander off from this discussion, if you still want to hear me drone on, get the Black Panther Blu-ray. I'm on there as well. So that's the foundational stuff. That's the basics. And let me bounce back to our moderator.
So I'm going to open it up to questions. Just a very succinct and quick and great way to present yourself. So let's open it up and see. Okay, first question, front row.
All right, thanks for being here, sir. I was curious. I'm sure it's on Wikipedia somewhere, but why James Owsley, Christopher Priest? Why two names? What happened there? I hadn't really heard the story.
I really don't know. I think an asteroid hit the Earth, hit the planet, and no, it's really not a big secret. In 1993, I legally changed my name. I legally changed my last name. The first two names were always the same. Everybody in my life, my family and my old friends, everybody calls me Chris or Christopher. I don't really like being called Chris, so don't start calling me that. I really don't like that much. But I've been Christopher my whole life. I only called myself Jim because everybody at Marvel in the 80s was Jim. There was Jim Shooter and Jim Salicrup. There was Jim, the letterer, whose name is escaping me right now. There's just a bunch of Jims up there. So I just wanted to be in the Jim Club. So I started calling myself Jim because my name was James, Christopher James. So I just adopted the Jim. But in 1993, I did change my last name. I don't really talk about reasons why because they're personal reasons and they really don't have anything to do with comics. And it's really funny when I get online and I read some of this stuff, and I try to avoid reading anything about me online, but I get online and I read some of this stuff, and I'll have people mocking me for changing my name or just attacking me for some reason. One guy called me a well-known crackpot. Well-known crackpot, Jim Owsley. And I was like, well, at least I'm well-known. I'll take that, Anybody else? Sir. Oh, it's the Oprah show. Thank you.
All right. I love it in Captain America and Falcon that you brought back MODOK.
Yeah.
I turned the page and I'm having Jack Kirby flashbacks. And that was my question. When you were a kid, were you a big Jack Kirby fan? And also, did you ever get a chance to meet the King or work with him at all? And
I never got a chance to meet him. I knew Stan pretty well. Stan and Reginald Hudlin and we worked on a film in, going way back now, early 90s, right around milestone time. Jack, I never had the pleasure. Jack would not come up to the office. At the time that I was working at Marvel, there was some sort of falling out, and Jack wasn't coming up there. But there were times when we'd go into the vault. It wasn't a real vault. It was a closet with a lock on it. But, the vault. We go into the vault, and there were all these Jack Kirby hundreds and hundreds of Jack Kirby pages, inked by Joe Sinnott, and I'd go in there, for whatever reason. I was the schmuck. I was the intern, go in there and straighten that out. So I'm in the vault with all this stuff, and I'm filing and organizing and stuff like that. Beautiful, Fantastic Four pages and, just gorgeous stuff like that. But unfortunately, no, I never got a chance to actually meet him, But if you're writing Captain America, you gotta do MODOK, you gotta do Hydra, you gotta, come on, you gotta do it. It's the law, it really is. It really is. Anybody else? Oh.
We're right at the 20th anniversary of Marvel Knights launching, and you taking T'Challa and Black Panther into the stratosphere and creating all kinds of things. Everett K. Ross, loads of elements that we saw in the film that were absolutely yours, and you got plenty of credit earlier, but I can't give you credit enough for really fleshing out the world of the Black Panther. What was this opportunity like when Joe and Jimmy came to you saying, take the reins, do what you want to do with Black Panther? What as you were saying with your Captain America run, you've got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this.
Yeah.
What kind of list were you putting together for yourself when it came to really fleshing out the world of the Black Panther?
Well, when I got the call from Joe, I got really excited because I'd always wanted to write Daredevil. And I was like, wow, this is going to be great. Daredevil. It's great. That's why he's calling. He's calling for Daredevil, right? And so I was really hyped up. And then he said, Black Panther. And I said, who? Who? What? Black Panther? And I turned him down. I didn't want to do it. I was like, no, Black Panther, Don McGregor is a friend of mine. I love Don McGregor. I don't want anyone taking this home. Don't get online and go, oh, he's dissing Don McGregor. Don McGregor did groundbreaking work with Black Panther, But when I was reading Black Panther, it's like, well, his costume's getting ripped all the time, and people are hitting him in the head. Some kid came up behind him and hit him in the head and knocked Black Panther out, and they tied him up and dragged him behind a truck. And I'm like, I don't want to write that guy. How many of you seen the film Casino with Robert De Niro? So there's a scene in the movie of Casino where the mob people, they come to De Niro and they want him to run the casino. And he's sitting by the pool, he's lounging by the pool, and he turns them down. And they got to talk him into it. And they go, no, we really need you. And Robert's like, I don't know. And then finally De Niro says, well, look, if I'm going to do it, I got to do it my way. No interference. You remember that scene? That was me on the phone with Quesada. Now, I helped get Quesada his start in this business, so that bastard owes me. You understand? Okay. That's another funny story when we get really bored here. But at any rate, so I can't, all right, but if I'm going to do Black Panther, I got, no. Black Panther, he's a technological genius, number one. Number two, he's the king. He's the sovereign king of a nation. He doesn't have to answer to anybody. I don't want to write this guy who's standing around in the back of the class photo of the Avengers going, hey! That's not it, So the thing about it is, many of you who are familiar with Black Panther, many of you who have seen the film, you won't realize or understand that 20 years ago, when I made the transition from the McGregor 1970s Panther to the more modern Panther that we see now, there was a huge uproar from the fans because I had given Black Panther the equivalent of an iPhone. He had something called a Kamoyo card. And a Kamoyo card worked about like an iPhone. And the fans went nuts. They said hate mail. They actually licked stamps in those days. It wasn't email. They actually went to the post office. Priest sucks. Get that guy off the book. We gave him these adamantium claws that could rip things up, and he had these boots, and he could climb up scale walls, and then he was always 5 steps ahead. I mean, he walks in the room, and then Mephisto's is terrorizing Ross, and Ross goes, "Should we call the Avengers?" And Black Panther goes, "Why? What do we need the Avengers for?" And he runs across the room, and he just hits him. He just, boom! And down goes Mephisto. And the fans just hate it. Said, you're some kind of lunatic. That's not the Black Panther. Well, it is now. So that's basically how I didn't want to do it. They talked me into doing it, and I said, well, that, and I want it to be funny. And nobody wanted a funny Black Panther. And I said, well, no, Black Panther's not funny. Ross is funny. But we needed a character in the Black Panther who could help. See, comic books have traditionally been made by white males for white males. Okay, so if we're selling this black character who was at the time was not fondly remembered, and we're trying to deliver it to this audience, we can't just shotgun it out there. That's what they did with Milestone. They just threw Milestone at this white male audience and then went, oh, we're so surprised that it didn't sell a lot. Okay, so if you're going to, I have to go and address the fears of the consumer base. So let me create this character who will give voice to all those fears, and that's Everett Ross, who had to be educated on the culture, the African culture, and the ways of this character, and the culture shock of this is a new version of Black Panther, so he would give voice to that. And Everett Ross actually had appeared in Kazar, a comic book that I was writing, and I just picked him up and moved him into Black Panther, and he became our point of view character. So not only was Panther now more capable, more technologically capable, he was smarter, he was more aggressive, he was scarier, he was Marvel's version of Batman, and he had more standing within the superhero community. But in addition to that, he had Everett, and the book had all this humor to it. That was, and the last thing you would expect from Black Panther is humor, and the combination worked really well. And we got written up by everybody, Entertainment Weekly, Village Voice. It just, mainstream press gobbled it up, and Marvel Knights took off. So this is actually the 20th anniversary of Marvel Knights. They're re-releasing all that stuff on trades. The Punisher, the Black Panther, the Inhumans, all that stuff is coming back. Marvel has some plans for to commemorate the 20th anniversary of Marvel Knights, but I can't tell you what they are because they have a lot of lawyers, and so we're going to stop, talking about that. But that's basically it there. Go.
Hi. First of all, big fan. Thank you for coming out here. Love your work. I know we can't talk about the Marvel stuff, but you mentioned Catalyst Prime and Lion Forge earlier, and I just discovered this company like a couple weeks ago, literally, before they
Me too.
And I was like, wait, when did Priest write this book last year? And can you tell us anything about how that came about, the whole impact? Because everything I looked at, it's like, I get the same vibe reading it that I do from the Milestone stuff from early 90s. So could you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I don't think people are as familiar with that as they are with the Marvel and DC work.
Okay,
and it looks pretty awesome.
It is. Okay, so the Lion Forge, they've been doing a lot of books, children's books, and different kind of educational books. And a couple of years ago, they decided, they had done a line of superheroes before, and it didn't go well. So they hired this guy, Joe Illidge. Joe Illidge was an editor at DC for a long time, and then Joe was at Milestone for quite a while. And I bumped into Joe at San Diego, last time I was there, which will be the last time I was there, which is why I'm here. And Joe cornered me and started telling me about this new revival, and it's a self-contained superhero universe called Catalyst Prime. So I have been kind of an unpaid consultant, extremely unpaid consultant, to the Lion Forge line of comics, and I've attended their retreats, and he sent me a bunch of notes for me to kind of review their notes and give them my input and so forth. And then when they were ready to launch last year, for Free Comic Book Day, I was asked to write the launch vehicle, the launch one shot for Free Comic Book Day, and that was very flattering. So I co-wrote that with Joe, and then over the last year or so, he browbeat me into actually doing ongoing work with them with a character called Astonisher, who is kind of he's kind of like Doctor Strange, except instead of him conjuring up magic, he creates technology. And he kind of works within sort of the astral plane, so he can go into your head and find out where you're at and tinker with you and so forth. It's a kind of a metaphysical book, and we're looking forward to that one. And that's been a blast to write so far. So I'm practically done with it. But as these things happen, it's in production and it goes through the artists and so forth. So I believe Halloween, Thanksgiving, something like that. We'll start seeing more about that coming out.
All right, just give me a second to crawl back up here.
So your run of the Black Panther was my gateway. I won't call it a drug, but that was my gateway in the comics. But I'm curious as to where you might have answered this question somewhere else too. But
I've answered every question someplace else.
Where'd you draw inspiration for the Dora, and like how'd you come up with that idea overall? But then like what ideas contributed to, or inspirations contributed to the Dora?
You're asking about the Dora Milaje.
Yes.
Okay, the Dora Milaje are the warrior women in the film, and they're walking around with those cool outfits and the spears. Ta-Nehisi Coates, who is the current writer of Black Panther, he gave them the cool outfits and he shaved their heads. Joe Quesada and I created the Dora Milaje, but we had them dressed like fashion models. They were Tyra Banks and why am I spacing the other super? Naomi Campbell. Thank you. That's what it was. Naomi Campbell and Tyra Banks, and they were wearing like these these designer mini dresses and high heels and beating people up because Joe thought that would be a really great visual. As far as the underlying thought about them, that was drawn from Don McGregor, the previous writer of Black Panther, because Don created a very realistic African nation that was a political nation, but it was also a tribal nation. So Wakanda is a place that has not only just advanced technology and advanced self-rule and government and so forth, but they still decide their leader by virtue of a combat ritual, which makes no sense. Because if we did that, then we would have had to have Hillary Clinton do a hand-to-hand combat with Donald Trump. Now, we'd all pay to see that. And I'm not really that sure that Donald would win. I don't know. Hillary looks like she's pretty tenacious, She looks scrappy. She's very scrappy, yeah. But it's kind of that dichotomy that here's an advanced nation of highly educated people who are yet immersed in this tribalism. And that's the balance that we struck. So with the Dora Milaje, what they represent, each one of the Dora Milaje would originally represented one of several key tribes within Wakanda, and they were kind of like these consorts of the Black Panther. Although he could never touch them, well, not touch them, but he really couldn't be intimate with them. He shouldn't be intimate with them, because if he were to choose one over the other, then the whole political system would kind of fall apart. So to keep the tension, to keep all the tribal interests held in tension, to avoid civil war in Wakanda, rather than him taking one queen, he took like 2 or 3 queens, and they were all equals, and he had no favorites, and so they never consummated anything, and there was never an official wedding, but they were his consorts, they were his bodyguards, and that's where the Dora Milaje, and that means adored ones. Dora Milaje means adored ones. And yes, I just made that up. Well, I don't mean just made it up. I made it up 20 years ago, but that's what that means there.
Have you ever written with the Spawn comics with Spawn? Spawn?
Yeah, no, I have not written Spawn, and I should talk to somebody about that. I can't believe I haven't written Spawn. Todd McFarlane's a great guy, way richer than me, so I would love to do the Spawn thing one day.
So you mentioned that this is your second time writing Justice League, correct?
No. It's my first time. My first
time?
at bat. Yeah, and my last.
Okay. So let me ask you this question: when you started writing when I read that you were going to write Deathstroke, which is a while back, it was like I did almost backflips, which is kind of impossible. But anyway, what made you come back to writing comics on a regular basis? Because it seemed like you were gone for a while.
And maybe again. Yeah, well, for a long time, after Black Panther, I'd done a comic book called Steel for DC Comics, if you know who he is. And at some point, I stopped being a writer, and I became a black writer. And that confused me. I didn't really understand that because for years, I was the guy who was writing Spider-Man, I was writing Green Lantern, I was writing Batman. When did I become a black writer, where all of a sudden all they're offering me were black characters of color? So what happens is this: every 18 months the phone rings, and it's some editor at Marvel or DC. Hey, we got a great idea. We're doing the new Black Bombo, and we want you to write it. Black Goliath, Black Sugar Bear, Black whatever, Except one time they called me up and they asked me to do a character called Firestorm. And I said, well, that's pretty cool. And we started talking. The editor and I started talking, and we started planning. And I went, okay, this sounds pretty good to me. Great. Send me everything you got on Firestorm. Let me take a look at it, and then I'll let you know. So the next day, the FedEx truck pulls up. Guy gets out, gives him a big box of stuff. I open the box. Here's like 8 issues of Firestorm. And I open it up, and he's black. Call the guy. He's black. Why did you tell me he's black? What did you make? He's a little black kid now. Like, what? I said, look, I can't do that. I just, and I've said this to editors over and over again. When you guys, I don't mind writing black characters. I would like to write black characters, but I don't want to be limited to just being a black artist, a black writer. I've worked too hard for my career to do that and to be pigeonholed like this. So I just kind of dropped out for a long time. So what happened was DC called me up and offered me Cyborg. And I gave him the speech. Thank you very much. Blah, blah, blah. That's very fine. Don Pardo will have some parting gifts. Okay? And off they went. And somehow that got back to Dan DiDio, who's the publisher of DC Comics. And he said, well, why aren't we offering him something else? So the phone rings again, and they said, Deathstroke. And I went, okay, Deathstroke. Is he still white? Yes, he's still white. Okay, I'm listening. Go. Okay, Teen Titans. He had this obsession with the Teen Titans. He's the guy with the sword and the half face. Okay, and then I gave him the Joe Quesada speech. Oh, I got to do it my way, So I got on the phone with Jeff Johns. Jeff Johns is he just resigned. He was the chief creative officer of DC Comics, and he does all the movie and TV stuff. So I'm on the phone with Jeff Johns. I said, look, you're the TV guy. If we're going to do Deathstroke, let's revision Deathstroke in a way that translates more easily and directly to TV and film. So let's ground it in reality. Because by the time I was taking over Deathstroke, he was like 250 pounds, and he was just lopping people's heads off, and it was kind of ridiculous. I said, no, Deathstroke is a family drama. Deathstroke is about the world's worst dad. He has 2 kids. He had 3, but 1 got killed. But Deathstroke is like the world's worst father. He is like, if you've ever seen the TV show House MD, anybody see House MD? Remember that show? Okay, Deathstroke is House MD with a machine gun. That's Deathstroke. Okay, and he has kids, and he's the world's worst father. And that's so I get a lot of credit for kind of revitalizing Deathstroke the way we did Black Panther. But every chance I get, I try to give half that credit at least to Jeff Johns, who was just a brilliant story guy, a great guy. And Jeff and I knew each other outside of comics because his aunt lives in Colorado. It's a long story. But that's where all that came from.
Anybody else? Coming. Actually, I'll just forward you the mic.
So you mentioned earlier that you would tell us the story of how Joe Quesada owes you. I've heard this story from Joe, and I'm very curious to hear it from you about how you took this little-known nobody Super Mario Brothers comics colorist and gave him literally everything that he has today, and he owes you his family and his retirement and all of his kids.
All right, so Joe Quesada is the chief creative officer of Marvel Comics. He is Marvel Comics. When you get a call from Joe Quesada, the mice stop scurrying. Joe Quesada, you know, his name is on the Daredevil show. He's on the Luke Cage show, the Iron Fist show, all that Netflix stuff. Every film, Joe Quesada's name is in there. Joe Quesada is the biggest of big cheeses at Marvel Comics. Okay, when I met him, he was like 97 pounds. He's a really skinny, like scared little kid. And an inker named Joe Rubenstein was shopping him around, was taking him around DC Comics trying to find work for him, and nobody wanted to hire the guy. I don't know why. When he got to me, I looked at the art. The art looked great, but I had no work. I had nothing to offer him at the moment. But I thought, the kid had a lot of potential. And it so happened while he was in the office and walking around, I got a call from an artist whose name I probably won't mention, but I got a call from an artist who was like upset with me for some reason. I don't remember. Something he wanted. I want a bigger trailer. I want my name above the credits. I don't know what he wanted. It was some ego thing that the artist wanted. Not that I refused him. I just couldn't do it. Whatever it was, I couldn't do it. And I said, let's call the artist Barry. But his name is not really Barry. But all right. So Barry, whatever it is, I just can't do it. I would do it for you if I could. I can't. And he got really obstreperous on the phone, and he's calling me names, and bada bing this, and bada bing that. And I'm like, well, I still can't do it. He was having a diva fit. Well, if I don't get what I want, then I'm gonna quit. And I'm like, well, I don't want you to quit, man. But well, that's it. I quit. So my artist quit on me, and he hangs up the phone, and I look at the phone for 2 minutes. Is that Quesada kid still here? So I went out. I ran out to the lobby, and Quesada's still in the army, in the lobby somewhere. And I think I gave him a cover. I said, "Look, if you come back tomorrow with this cover, I will give you this issue, and we'll try out on this issue." And that's pretty much. If this artist had not quit, I wouldn't have hired him. But let's make no mistake about it. Joe is an extremely talented individual. This would have happened for Joe regardless. Joe is also one of the guys who, one of the only few guys who had the job of editor-in-chief at Marvel and lived to tell. Because every other editor-in-chief has been fired, not just fired, but escorted out of town by the sheriff. It's just, okay, not only are you fired, but, you really must go now. These gentlemen in the uniforms will help you out. Joe, virtually every other editor-in-chief has just left under disastrous circumstances, and the only guy to really rejuvenate himself or survive that experience has been Bob Harris, who is now the editor-in-chief of DC Comics. So, he survived that. Joe at some point just realized it's time to go. And he negotiated something where he got kicked upstairs. It was like, okay, well, rather than me stay in this job too long and end up like everybody else, let me go ahead and take this promotion and go out to L.A. And he went out there and developed all of this. Him and now again, Jeff Loeb, I think, yeah, and several other people. They went out there and developed all that Netflix stuff. And the rest is history, where he's just a very popular, very powerful guy who can crush me like a bug. So I have to be careful what I say about him.
If I can ask you one more, actually dialing back in time.
Dialing.
Going way, way back.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your origin story as a comics fan. Like, what what was your point of no return as somebody falling in love with the medium itself? Was it newspaper strips? Was it stapled books? Where does Christopher Priest loving comics start?
All right. Well, all right. Well, Christopher Owsley got sick when he was 8 years old, and I don't remember what it was. It was some childhood disease, whatever. But I was bedridden for a couple of days, and my mother was dumb enough to come home with a comic book. I had never seen a comic book, didn't know what a comic book was. Mom comes home. She comes home with something about Superman's little pal, Jimmy Olsen. And Jimmy was dressed like a pirate for some reason. I'm like, well, why is Jimmy dressed like a pirate? I knew Jimmy from the TV show, but I was like, oh, what's this? So I got this comic book, and I read it, and I said, okay, and I started reading comics from that point. I started reading all DC comics until 1969, right about 69, where Marvel did a special issue of Spider-Man that dealt with Harry Osborn being hooked on drugs. And that got written up in the New York Daily News, and my mom read that, and she's desperate to keep me off drugs. She still is. And she brought home this copy of Spider-Man. And I got to tell you, back in those days, Spider-Man was like crack cocaine. It was like once I got a whiff of Spider-Man and Marvel, it's like, woo, this is so much better. And I just got hooked on that, and I became this Marvel fan. And I just kind of never looked back.
Any other questions?
I've got one to wrap us up. So, while I'm being selfish, you mentioned earlier that you haven't gotten to play with the X-Men toys in the toy box, and not to, I guess, spoil what you would do if what is it? Will Moss is over those books now.
No, it's a guy named Jordan White.
Jordan White. If Jordan White finally gave you the keys to the X-Men Cadillac and said, "Here, drive it around."
You mean after they resuscitate me from shock?
Are there any X-Men characters that you think are underloved that you really, really would love to, put to use?
I think there are no X-Men characters who are underloved. I think if I was given a chance to write, any sort of X something, I would want to write a book that explains that universe to people who have no freaking clue what is going on, because X-Men has become so self-referential and so convoluted, and so I would want to write the book that just does this. Let's start, like if you pick up the I'm not trying to push comics on you, but if you pick up Deathstroke #1 or the Deathstroke trade, the first Deathstroke trade, when you open up that first issue of Deathstroke, you don't have to know anything about who Deathstroke is. You don't have to know anything about his history. It's just once upon a time there was a guy named Slade. He was an assassin. He had a big blade. It just starts from there. So I would want to write once upon a time there was this guy named Xavier and build it, and build something from there, because I used to love the X-Men. I have no friggin' clue what the X-Men is about anymore. The other thing is that when you're not offered something, or you're not given enough opportunity for a long enough period of time, at some point you just go, well, why do I need to keep up with this? They're never going to open the kimono and let me do any of that stuff anyway. And if all they're offering me is, hey, let's do the Falcon. I was doing a book called Captain America and the Falcon. And at some point, Marvel said, hey, we got a great idea. We're going to take Cap out of the book, and we're going to rename it The Falcon. And that's when I quit comics. That's when I said, that's it. I'm wasting my time, because you guys don't get it. You're demoting me now, I can't believe you even thought that was a good idea. So I just never kept up with the X-Men, and I'd have to go to X School, and they're planning some sort of big fix. They're always planning the big something. DC's like, oh, we got the big this, and Marvel's got, oh, we got the big that. So there's some big thing going on with the X-Men. I would hope, whether it's me or whether it's somebody else, that they would bring in somebody else. In other words, enough with the usual suspects. What that franchise needs is fresh blood. It needs to bring in somebody that you haven't seen an X-Men story from before. And let's see if there's a new vision, if there's some new life that you can breathe into these characters and take it where. The reason why Black Panther made so much money was that it had universal themes and it was really accessible. Period. And then I went from Black Panther to the premiere of Avengers Infinity War and dozed off in Infinity War. One, because I had jet lag. The other was because it was like, huh, what, what, and it's like they just throw you into the blender, and you're on the space barge, and Thanos's people are doing it, and Thor, and you don't know it's Thor because he's got a haircut now, and they kill Loki, and spoiler, and I'm going, if I brought my grandmother to this, not my grandmother, she's dead, I'm sorry. If I brought my mom to this, she wouldn't have any idea what's going on. But I could bring my mom to Black Panther, and she could follow the story. Let's do an X-Men book where you can do that. And that's the book that I would want to write.
Any last questions, just to make sure that we got everything covered? Okay, there's always that one last guy up at the very back row.
And feel free to stop by the table. I'm here today and tomorrow. I don't sell anything. The stuff that's on the table there, that's to benefit something called the Initiative. It benefits something called the Heroes Initiative, which is a charity that supports retired comic book artists and writers and helps them with their medical bills and personal expenses and things like that.
I'm just curious if there's anything that isn't necessarily Marvel or DC that you've wanted to get your hands on.
Oh yeah, I've got like every other writer out there. I have creator-owned stuff, and I'm actually actively engaged with Image Comics right now to bring some of that stuff out. And I am a wannabe novelist. If you go on Amazon.com and you punch in Christopher Priest, you'll see a bunch of my novels up there. I'm definitely going to be doing some self-publishing. I have an agent who handles me for my novels and prose and stuff, but he doesn't like my work. I mean, he'll do the contract, but he's not going to shop it around. So I need a new agent, but I can't get a new agent if your old agent hates you. So I'm kind of in the middle of the agent thing, trying to get that all straightened out. But my dream gig is to just be like a barely employed novelist writing bad stuff that nobody reads and living in like a Unabomber shack in the woods and, hey. You got it?
What was your favorite novels that you ever wrote?
Oh, man, my favorite. How old are you?
9.
You're 8?
9.
You're 9. Okay. When I was 10 years old, I wrote a Batman novel. Okay. I asked my mom for a typewriter. It's a long story. I know we got to go. Mom gave me a typewriter reluctantly, and I killed that typewriter writing a novel. And it was a Batman novel, Batman and Robin, when I was 10 years old, and that's my favorite novel. Right now, on Amazon, there's something called 1999, which you can't read because it's got too much sex and violence in it. But a couple of years, come back and see me. All right, folks. Well, thank you very much for showing up and listening to me gas on for a while. And I'll turn you back to Chris here.